Okay, figure 5 shows a food web for a small-scale ecosystem. Most of you did well on this. So 2 impacts of a reduction in stream invertebrates. Here's our stream invertebrates. Who will be affected? Our fish populations will decline. Our algae, which they're feeding on, will increase there. So essentially, those are the 2 answers that are the most obvious ones to give. So our fish populations decline, our algae will increase because there's no longer anything feeding on it. Let's see what the mark scheme says for this question. Okay, so amount of algae can increase with knock-on effect on abiotic conditions. So of course we know about eutrophication. The algae could then, overpopulate the lake. Less food for fish, so they may eat other things, and that would have an effect on the rest of the food web. Other things that depend on the invertebrates in their emergent phase. So you might not just talk about the fish, but you might talk about, so if the invertebrates emerge, they come out of the water as adult insects, the birds and the bats and the spiders, and the lizards would have less food, as well as the fish. So any of those, it's a 2-mark question, so you should be able to get the 2 marks there, which most of you did. Now, for some reason, almost none of you knew the answer to the next question. It's just name, so state. This might have come from an older exam. I don't think we use the command term name anymore, but state the name of. The answer is just simply succession. So since nobody got that, we will do some revision on succession. Okay, outline a method for measuring an abiotic factor in a named ecosystem you have studied. Okay, 3 marks. I know the named ecosystem might be a bit hard. You need to pick a named ecosystem. For example, mangrove forests in Southeast Asia, pine, taiga, in upper elevation Japan, right? That's our forest. So just have a couple on hand, memorize them, have some named ecosystems. I have a sheet that I have all the case studies, or these kinds of things that you have to memorize, like you need to know an endangered species, you need to know one that's gone extinct, and I've got a list of those, of everything that you need to know, that you have to memorize, so I will provide that to you. Okay, now you've also got to tell them what abiotic factor you're going to measure. Let's say we're going to measure light intensity. You are not going to get marks in a question like this for naming the ecosystem or naming the abiotic factor. Those are just there so that the question, your answer, will make sense. If you don't have them though, you probably can't get the marks. So you need to have them in there. However, we're still looking for the 3 marks that you will need for getting these 3 questions. Now, whenever you're asked for a method, the first thing that you need to do is to talk about how you're going to set up your sampling. So for example, are you going to run a transect through the forest, and then you're going to take measurements every meter? Are you going to compare 2 areas and take samples of particulate matter to look at air pollution in those two areas to compare them? And how are you going to randomize where you take the sample? So you could get a random set of coordinates and go and take the sample there. So we have to, how are we going to sample and how are we going to avoid bias? And how are we going to do, what's the method? Right, so we might use a vernier light probe, light intensity probe, right? And we might lay out a transect, and we might take measurements every meter. And the other thing, so you've got here's your method, here's your sampling and avoiding bias, right? And then the third thing is your repeats, your reliability. How do you know you didn't just get those results by chance? Because you're going to get them again and again. So repeat 5 times. So you'd run 5 transects in similar areas of the forest. So whenever you're asked about a method, you've got your sampling method, how you avoid the bias, and the actual method itself, the tools you will use. Learn this, okay? And whenever a methodology question comes up, you've got it. Boom, boom, boom.